Good morning. It is Thursday. It is still morning. It's just a little bit after 11 o'clock. I'm Mayor Victoria Gearity, coming to you with the weekly Thursday update. This is our second Thursday doing the weekly update. I would like to have started at 11 o'clock. I'm trying to have that be our more predictable, regular time for these updates. But I was participating in an online call with, one of those WebEx type of Zoom style panel discussions that was hosted for us by Westchester County with their Office of Tourism in partnership with their Economic Development Office, talking about dining and shopping during COVID. And we got to hear from a couple of other communities and organizations about what's going on to try and support businesses and get some ideas from some of the other communities and what they're doing, particularly Tarrytown. The Tarrytown Sleepy Hollow Chamber was represented, and the mayor of Larchmont was there, so we got to hear what's happening in their communities. And they've done much more with the streets shutting down. They both had different approaches. Both of those communities invested in some barriers, quite a few barriers, thousands of dollars to be able to do more of those street shutdowns. So then they approached it in different ways. Larchmont, for example, where they did street shutdowns or parking lane shutdowns, it's just like that 24/7. Whereas in Tarrytown, you may have seen that they've shut down a portion of Main Street. They just do that during the weekends. They have decided to continue that through the summer. There was some mixed information about how that was going, but they initially had some questions, and everybody is trying to figure out how to balance what one business needs if it seems to get in the way of what another business needs, and how do you adjust for that. And they seem to have figured out a pretty good balance in all of those communities. Sometimes that means creating a designated 15-minute parking spot for takeout and delivery folks, or takeout folks who are coming to pick up a meal rather than sitting down, because a lot of people still are not comfortable sitting down in restaurants. So that was an interesting call, and always good to hear from other communities. So that's why I didn't get started at 11 o'clock. So I'm planning to use these weekly updates in large part to give you a recap of the highlights from last night's village board meeting. We meet pretty much every Wednesday. And last night we had a work session, and we did talk about some quite a number of meaty topics. We opened up with a discussion, an update from BFJ, who are the consultants that are working with us on our comprehensive plan. And I want to encourage you to put any of your thoughts, ideas, concerns onto what we call the ideas wall. So if you go to villageofossining.org, you'll see an icon that is for the comprehensive plan. If you click on that, you can go to the ideas wall. You can see what some other folks have written, and you can comment on other people's ideas. You can put some of your own ideas up. And one of the things we decided last night, we're going to keep that up through the summer. But very soon we will have a questionnaire that's going out that's much more in-depth and targeted, and we'd like to get some responses to that as well. So we're looking for different mechanisms for doing outreach and getting community engagement on really important topics related to the comprehensive plan, which is everything from what sort of density do we have in our community, what is our waterfront development going to look like, what is housing going to look like, what is economic development, how do we incentivize that, through all of our planning and zoning. The comprehensive plan, New York State requires you to have a comprehensive plan, and then all of your zoning laws must be in compliance with what that comprehensive plan includes. So it's an incredibly important document. Ours is now 11 years old in the village of Ossining, so we are updating it, and now is your chance to help be part of the vision, or deciding what is the vision for at least the next decade in our community and beyond, because when something's built, it's there for a very long time. So if it's something wonderful that we built that provides terrific jobs or homes or a beautiful asset to our community, then that's a great thing. If it's something that is going to become an obstacle for us to be able to do other great things in the community, then that's not such a good thing. So if you think that you have strong opinions or ideas, or you want to make sure that the community reflects what you think makes sense in the community, now is your chance. Please visit the ideas wall, take a look at where other people's minds are at, and put some of your ideas as comments or as your own ideas on the ideas wall. And then when that questionnaire comes out, please do respond to it. Also, we had a visit from Westchester Power, which is a big one of the big programs that exists for Sustainable Westchester. It was a nice chance for me to see my friend Dan Welsh. I was part of the steering committee with Dan and a number of us from the Northern Westchester Energy Action Consortium and the Southern Westchester Action Consortium. And it was just before I became mayor. When I was a trustee, I was actually running for mayor. We spent a whole year every other week getting together and figuring out how we could established Sustainable Westchester, and now it is an incredibly successful, vibrant not-for-profit, and the members of that not-for-profit are municipal governments throughout Westchester, and they now have all municipal governments throughout Westchester except for one, Buchanan, which is interesting because so much of what they do is related to renewable energy. And that's what we were talking about last night. The Village of Ossining was one of the first communities to sign up to participate in community choice aggregation, which is, and we are in the 100% renewable energy, which is what most municipalities have joined. And what that means is that for our community, if you are a Con Ed customer, unless you have an ESCO, unless you're signed up, with Green Mountain Energy or one of those, I'm not advertising for them, but any of the independent energy companies, if you're just a Con Ed customer, everybody still gets their bills from Con Ed. Con Ed manages all of the transmission lines and the maintenance. So when your power goes out, yes, call Con Ed no matter where you're getting your energy from. But and that's what Con Ed's main job is, providing the transmission lines and the maintenance of that. If we didn't have the CCA, then Con Ed would just be buying the energy that then goes through those transmission lines, and it could be whatever kind of energy. It could be coal energy, it could be petroleum energy. But we, along with several other communities in Westchester, pooled our resources. By that we just mean the number of households, the number of customers, and so basically we can buy in bulk. It's like our communities going out to market and saying, we have a lot of customers that want to buy renewable energy, and so what's the best deal that we can get? And so we reviewed some of that and how beneficial it's been. Part of what I got to learn as through my involvement with Sustainable Westchester is the tremendous amount of oversight that New York State has before we were ever able to move forward with the CCA. There's a tremendous consumer protection, so that by participating in this, nobody's getting a raw deal. You have a lot of protection. It's a different approach because there's a fixed rate, and so as we've seen tremendous fluctuations with the energy market, the CCA keeps it at a predictable fixed rate, and it's been a good deal for us and for all of the other customers. So we're looking to renew that contract, but it also is an opportunity to learn more about what's happening with community solar and buying solar credits. So sort of this layering on of how energy efficient, how much renewable energy can any of us have. And some of the opportunities are community-wide, like the CCA, and some of them are based on your individual circumstance. I have solar on my house. A lot of people in Austin have solar in their house. We are a very well-adapted community for solar installations. Some people can't have solar in their house, but that's one of the layers. So we have solar. If you have solar, then that takes care of some, if not all, of your electrical needs. And then because you're in Ossining, the CCA is purchasing renewable energy credits to pay for your energy, to source your energy in a renewable way. And then on top of that, there are community solar opportunities that we're looking to expand. So the Village of Ossining submitted a list of all of our publicly owned properties so that we could get some information from NYPA, which is the New York Power Authority, on what solar installations could be possible. Could there be canopies at the parking lots? Could there be rooftop solar installations on village-owned properties? Are there open spaces at any of the village-owned properties where we could have ground-mounted solar installations? And there's many more opportunities now than there ever were. There have been a lot of obstacles to get municipalities and schools to be able to access solar in the same way that individuals have. The reason why it's affordable for most of us, for anybody who's a private homeowner, to be able to have solar on your property is because there are a lot of programs to incentivize that, and those are now becoming available to municipal governments and public entities. So we're very excited to be exploring all of those options, which could then put another layer where anybody can buy solar credits. And the way that works, I'm just learning about myself, but if you pay $90 toward the solar credit, you get $100 worth of electrical energy, and hopefully that's going to be a streamlined process for people in the coming year, where that would again all be on one bill. So it was an interesting conversation. I'm excited to learn more about that, just for me as a homeowner, but because the Village of Ossining is one of the communities that participates, that is a member of Sustainable Westchester, we have all of these programs available for our residents. Sometimes they're programs that are community-wide, sometimes they're programs that are eligible, that you're eligible for because you are an Ossining resident. And then one of the other big things that we talked about was the police review and plan for improving our police services. And that came to us by executive order from the governor. It's one of the, we talk about these unfunded mandates. The governor put out this executive order 203 a few weeks ago and said every municipality that has a police force needs to do I'm actually going to review this for you, because it's something that a lot of people, if I could identify a couple of things, the last two items I have today are the things that we hear the most about. One of them is people complying with the guidelines for social distancing and mask wearing. And the other is, what are we doing to review our police department and what's going on with that? And as you saw a couple of weeks ago, the chief updated the policies, and all of our use of force policies are consistent with the recommendations from Campaign Zero of the 8 Can't Wait. And that was really good news. So building on that, how do we fulfill the mandate from the governor for the Executive Order 203? And that is, I'm gonna read pieces of it to you and then tell you where we're going from here. Each local government with a police agency must perform a comprehensive review of current police force deployments, strategies, policies, procedures, and practices, and provide a plan for improvement for the purpose of addressing the particular needs of the community served, and promote community engagement to foster trust, fairness, and legitimacy, and to address any racial bias and disproportionate policing of communities of color. The chief executive of the local government, that's me, and in our case, along with the Board of Trustees, shall convene the police chief and community stakeholders to develop the plan, which shall consider evidence-based policing strategies, quote, including but not limited to use of force policies, procedural justice, any studies addressing systemic bias or racial justice in policing, implicit bias awareness training, de-escalation training and practices, community-based outreach, and conflict resolution, problem-oriented policing. So that's the core of what we're talking about here. We need to have a comprehensive review of those law enforcement strategies, policies, procedures, and we need law enforcement experts to be leading the way on that. And so that's part of why it's so important for us to be working with our police chief and the Ossining Police Department. And then it talks about really the three components that need to come together for us to be able to do this well and to be fulfilling this obligation, and that is the local government, the police chief and department, and community stakeholders. And there's a couple more bullets, but the last one that I'll read is the municipality with the local police must consult with stakeholders, including members of the police department, members of the community with emphasis on areas with high numbers of police and community interactions, interested nonprofit and faith-based groups, local office of the district attorney, public defender, and elected officials to create a plan to adopt and implement recommendations from the review and consultation. So, starts off talking about we need a review of what we currently do, what is currently on the books, and policies and procedures that our law enforcement undertakes. And then it talks about we need to convene community conversations. We need to do some public engagement that's coordinated by the local government with the police department, with community members. And what we were focusing our conversation on last night, and what will be our next step, is to bring in someone to facilitate, people who do this professionally, that help guide these public conversations, that will be in some kind of a Zoom room with representatives from a number of community organizations, some of whom have already raised their hands, some of whom are just terrific community partners that we work with so much in so many ways. In Ossining, we're very fortunate to have so many public entities, not-for-profit entities, community groups that work together for the betterment of our community, that will be part of these conversations. But the conversations aren't they're not a free for all of how are you feeling. They do give us, while the mandate is a little unclear, there is some clarity on what it is we need to be reviewing and what it is we need to be considering. So as we move forward with this, what we're doing now is clarifying what we're asking of a facilitator to come in, what would be a path to success in just the next few months. Because what I didn't get into is what we have to do as a local government to fulfill this, which is by April 1st, so really by next March, the village board needs to vote to pass a resolution. It could be legislation. I imagine it'll be a resolution because that's a faster process to pass a resolution in support of this plan. Well, getting to the plan is the tricky part. So what we need to do is get that plan completed in a good, strong draft by the end of the year. So bringing in a facilitator helps us with the public engagement. Facilitator's probably not going to have an expertise in law enforcement, but what they will have an expertise in is public engagement. Facilitating these conversations, listening to the information from the community, and articulating that, helping use all of that to draft the plan that comes to us in village government and the police department. And then when we have a plan that we feel reflects what is in the best interest of our community and what we're hearing from our community, then that needs to go out to the public very, very early on in January so that the public then has time, everyone, whether you are a stakeholder that participated, whether you've been sharing ideas yet or not, there have to be a number of touch points for people to be able to be part of this process and to be heard and to give feedback. So then there will be, the clock will start ticking. People will have X number of weeks to read the plan, to give feedback on the plan, and then we'll integrate. Well, I won't be a mayor anymore, but my colleagues who are in village government will integrate that feedback into the plan that is ultimately voted on probably at a March meeting, because April 1st is not a Wednesday, so it'll happen sometime at a March meeting that the village board will approve the plan. And if we do not do that, and if we do not do that in a manner that the governor or that the office, the director of the division of budget for New York State feels is consistent with this executive order, then we jeopardize state funding. So this is something that the governor has said, this is very important. You have to do it. Figure out how to do it. We'll give you a little bit of guidance. We expect that there'll be some more guidance coming down the line. The good news is that we are far, far ahead of a lot of other communities, because when I talk about those stakeholders, one of the important stakeholders in that is our Civilian Police Complaint Review Board. We have some new members that we are very excited about that are on board, and they are starting to meet, and they're meeting in a new way now with a new additional purpose beyond reviewing any complaints about interactions with police. They are now one of the stakeholders, and there are a group of people that also have and are receiving training to have a little additional insight as community members, as Ossining residents who are serving in this special capacity. So that's an example of the Ossining Police Department's many, many years of commitment to community policing and to serving our very special community well. And there's also an acknowledgement by everyone that everyone can always continue to do better, and that this is sort of forcing us to have this conversation in a more deliberate way than we have in the past. And I'm looking forward to it and really pleased to be getting it underway and to be able to start making sense of what this mandate is. I think it's going to be a beneficial process for our community, although it is one that we didn't plan on taking care of this summer and fall. But it's now on our plate, and we're looking to get some good help from a facilitator to have some constructive meetings and write up a really worthwhile plan for our community. So those were the big topics of the evening. The last thing we talked about was a little bit frustrating. You've seen me post so many times about, I'll post up frequently the map that we get from the county that talks about all of the active cases in the village. The last one I posted the other day, maybe it was just yesterday, was that we have 13 active cases in the village right now, which is a little disappointing because we were down to like 6 and 7 last week. And so we want to keep going down and staying in those single digits. And so what are the things that we all know we need to do? Maintain distance. When you can't maintain distance, wear a mask, wash and sanitize your hands. And we added to that recently, avoid any non-essential travel to hot spots so that, don't go to Florida and come back and go to a big community event and make a bunch of people sick. As we saw, that's a bad idea. The challenging thing is that we know all of this. And all of us who are paying attention and being thoughtful and recognize the importance of these practices are doing it. But what do you do when somebody is not abiding by these practices? Well, when that's the case, it's a little bit, there's the enforcement mechanism is a little challenging. So what is the most clear is if there is a business that is operating or allowing others to operate, allowing customers to come in and not wear masks. If there is a business where the employees are not wearing masks. If there is a restaurant that is allowing people to stand up and eat and drink without a mask on, or just to stand up and walk around table to table, or if the tables are too close together, if the tables are not allowing 6 feet between a table and a pedestrian walkway. Those are all violations that our building department can and must respond to, or the county Department of Health. And those businesses would be at risk for losing their license if they are not compliant. So in those cases, there is a more clear path to enforcement. The other stuff, if you see someone walking around without a mask, it may not actually be a violation of the rules. You are allowed to go outside without a mask on. You just have to stay 6 feet away from somebody. And the other thing that makes it extra challenging is the rules are constantly changing. This week, youth sports started up. I have kids who are athletes. I cannot believe New York State's allowances for youth sports. There's baseball games starting up, and they have the adults are all wearing masks, and the kids are limited to how many kids can be in a dugout. They can't share equipment. So there are some logical things that are very different than how youth sports might have been in the past, where kids just all shared bats and didn't think anything of it. But they are starting up, and that is inherently going to have kids not wearing masks. And I'm saying kids because youth sports is what one of the things that we're so conscious of in the village when we opened up the fields this week. It is in conjunction with youth sports starting up and practices and I'm saying camps because it's not usually really camps, but outdoor programming for kids. And so sometimes you may see people behaving in a way that seems like, gosh, that must not be right. But it may actually be in compliance. Typically what the police department is finding is that usually people just need a reminder, or maybe they didn't forget, maybe they just didn't think it was really that important anymore, or maybe they're just getting a little bit too comfortable with going out and being in our community. And in that case, it's more of a reining in of this sense of comfort, this we've kind of gotten pandemic fatigue, and that is incredibly understandable. It's been 4 months now that we've been behaving in a way that we never have before. But as we've seen throughout the country, and we've even seen in neighboring communities, it all switches in a moment. And so we want to continue on this path of reopening. We want to continue to see the hospitalization rates staying and going lower. We want to keep seeing the death rate staying low and going lower. We also want to see the number of active cases in Ossining staying and going lower. So please, 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 remind your children, remind your neighbors, keep vigilant, wear your mask, keep your distance, and wash and sanitize your hands. Your vacations that you normally might have taken during the summer are not going to be the same as they ever were, and there's a lot of places where you can't go without coming home and quarantining yourself. And quarantining is another example of it's sort of on the honor system. We just have to, everybody has to be willing to look out for their neighbors and recognize that you may be a carrier. You could be a threat, and goodness, how awful would you feel if you found out later that you did have the virus and you carried it and you went someplace and you didn't take all of these precautions, and someone else who has compromised health caught it from you, that you could be the person who created the hotspot. How terrible do you think that family, that doctor in New Rochelle feels, or that family at the Horace Greeley graduation who didn't realize that they were infected, and then they created a hotspot in their community and they jeopardized the health of people in their community. Nobody wants to be that person. It's something we still have to take very, very seriously. And we know that if we follow all of these guidelines, we can continue with a phased reopening. So please, please, please remain vigilant, take it seriously, and at the same time, try to find ways to have a normal, healthy, mentally healthy experience, and that is definitely a challenge for us all. We are seeing very much an uptick in depression and people having mental health challenges, being so isolated. So compassion is as necessary as washing your hands and wearing your mask. I hope you're able to get outside once in a while. There's some beautiful places to go hiking and biking and take a walk in our community. We have wonderful businesses that are working so hard to be adaptable, to have all of their customers, whether it's takeout and delivery, curbside, or have outdoor dining, and some of them even have indoor dining now, very well spaced out. And for the vast majority of cases, people and businesses are working hard to follow all of the rules and do things right. And really, the best way to keep that compliance is social pressure. The idea of a $10,000 fine for somebody not wearing a mask is just really not an enforceable idea. And so it has to come from us. We've done an amazing job in New York State to this point, and I'm very proud to be in New York, and very dismayed at so many of the other states that are not taking this seriously. So all of us in Ossining have an opportunity to keep our numbers down. We're a pretty tight-knit community, and most of us care so deeply about our neighbors in our community, and this is one way to show it. All right, thank you very much for tuning in. This will be up on YouTube for anyone who's not on Facebook or didn't catch it live. And I look forward to getting back together with you next week. If you have topics that you would like me to address or provide updates on, please shoot me an email, and I can usually elaborate a little more on a forum like this. I will try to email or call you back as well if it's something that is something you need an answer to. Be well.